Our next panel will be discussing how to preserve landscape heritage in rapidly growing cities. This discussion will look at how cities can grow at incredible speed without losing cultural or landscape identity. And so it's my pleasure to introduce this panel with us today. Annie Baillie, the design director of Place Dynamix. I've never met Annie personally. We've spoken on the phone. Annie, look forward to joining us. Please come here. We also have Dr. El-Keblawy. He is the professor of environmental biotechnology at the University of Sharjah. Thanks, Ali. We have Sam Spinks, the managing director of WAHO, the landscape architects. We have Michael Patte, the Associate Director of Design for AECOM. Michael, thanks for joining us. I haven't seen you this morning. Where are you? Where's Michael? And we also have David Maestres, the Director of Landscape Lead at AECOM. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to your discussion. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this discussion on cultural continuity. I'm just going to hand over to our panelists to introduce yourselves, please. So we'll start with Dr. Ali first, please.
Thank you, Annie. Ali El-Keblawy. I am professor from University of Sharjah, working for the last 28 years with nature. Almost all native plants in the Arabia, mainly here in the United Arab Emirates. Every one of, or most of them, I have a story with. So it is really pleasure to join you today.
Good morning, my name is Michael Patte. I'm Associate Director for AECOM. I'm leading actually a KSA office. And likewise, it's a real pleasure to be with you today. And I'm sure we will have a nice conversation.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is David Maestres. I'm a director, design lead for landscape at AECOM here in the Middle East. I oversee the work coming out of Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and KSA. Part of my life, I got to spend some time back in the US, about 20 years of my professional life, and I've been in the region for the last 5 years. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Sam Spinks, WAHO Landscape Architects, based in the United Arab Emirates.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. Okay, so let's kick off with the very first question then. We're talking about cultural continuity. Please, each individually, can you tell me what that means to you? We'll start off with Sam at the top, please.
Straight off the bat, I think a really important concept is authenticity, and I think that's important for all design disciplines, whether it's signage, lighting, interior, or architecture. But particularly for us, more often than not, we are working in the public realm, and we are working for people who are 5 all the way up to 95. So it's really important to have a space that is relevant and draws on the cultural and historical context of that particular site. But it could be the site, or it could be the country, or it could be the wider region.
Okay, thank you. David?
For us, I think it's almost like a moral necessity or duty to do a forensic understanding of the thread, the historical thread of any site that we're working on. It's an important element that helps us determine and define the DNA of any project, and I think it's just simply part of the essence of what we do, as designers. So it's very important that just simply maintains its solidity in the foundational of any project and any design that we do.
Michael, please.
So, to me, as a foreigner working in a culture that is not directly mine, I think it's something that forced to be more humble in the way we approach design. I've been working 20 years in China in the city of Shenzhen, fast-growing development city, and now I'm, as I mentioned, already in Riyadh, and I think it's very important to develop, an approach that helps us designers to, of course, bring all the value and culture and all the approach, design approach that we have been developed through our career, but really to match and merge with the local culture to talk real and bring something that is really meaningful for this context, these societies, these people. And that's why I've been always also involved in non-governmental organizations, etc., to do extra work, to understand more the place where we are working and what stand, the placemaking in this region.
Dr. Ali.
For me, actually, this means that to bridge the old generation with the current generation. So our old generation here is linked to the nature. It was part of their life. They used all plants in their food, in their everything as a medicine, shelter, fire, everything in their life. So how to link the culture of those people to our city now, how to bring nature to our city. And I believe we can do that. If we do that, in this case, there will be continuity for generations and to conserve our heritage.
Thank you, and that actually very conveniently leads on to the next question, which is how, as designers, we draw inspiration from our immediate environments of the UAE or the Middle East at large. What are we looking at to pull that inspiration out? Is it heritage? Is it social culture? Is it something we're trying to create as a result of something that we read in a development brief? What kind of inspiration, what factors really kind of guide our initial thoughts? So, Michael, let's start with you, please.
I think, every society is dealing with this environment. And I think, in fact, the approach of the environment, it's what we can learn from the past generation and the people that have been using the space and this natural condition, weather, plant, etc., as you mentioned, and how they have been surviving. Because today, it's about survival in context here. So it's really important to go back to this basic element to influence our approach, and again, bringing, a technology that maybe, or approach at least, that can really be inspired by all these years and thousands of years that people have been spending to accommodate and to deal with the environment, to develop something more sustainable, etc. Today, of course, with the technology, etc., in maybe since 1980 or even before, we have been able to develop so much things and big and bringing infrastructure, industrial way of designing the city. But I think today we should go back to a tradition, understanding again all this know-how, to turn it into a new and innovative solution that is not innovative at all, actually. It's just understanding the history we have and use it.
I think that's a really interesting point that you're saying about looking backwards and the simplicity of actually what we need and what we want. I think we've gotten so far ahead in driving the city forward that we've actually forgotten what the true fabric of culture is and what that means to us. And we probably don't realize it because the rate of our lifestyle is so fast at the minute. But Sam, how do you deal with this kind of aspect in your designs?
Well, I think a really interesting thing to think about is the way that we look at behaviors within space. So we have tangible and intangible elements. So intangible can be the way that we behave in a particular area, the way that we are welcomed into a courtyard, the way that we feel space. And then tangible are sort of physical things that we can draw on. So colors and textures and old remnants that are within a space. So I think for us as designers, it's really about drawing on those two components of culture and heritage. David,
your thoughts, please.
Sure. For me, it's never been a linear process. It's a process that is compacted with a lot of different layers. Where history, is one of those layers. Research, benchmarking, analysis at different scales of the site, the project, the culture, doing extensive research, and then of course beginning to translate that into a design iterative process that is in many cases becomes very exhaustive, painful, at the same time, gratifying once you begin to distill and synthesize all the information into something that for you become meaningful. That I think is a tricky part of design. It's never a process that is measurable. It's very, in my opinion, it's very exhaustive, but it's also, full of different nuances and explorations.
Dr. Ali, just give us your insight on heritage and culture from your academic perspective.
Yes, I believe this is the most important. So, as I mentioned, culture is very important, and it is deeply rooted with the peoples here, especially the local peoples. So how to bring nature here? I'm not architect, but the most important issue is to familiarize architect here with the nature and natural resources. Unfortunately, most of the architects here, they are not familiar with native plants. They don't know the harmony between them. They don't know how to compile them in a way that show the best. So currently, we work in Tuam Hospital. Today, I heard about from HEMA about very important issue or example in Singapore where they have this hospital landscape. So we worked in something here in Tuam Hospital El Ain, where we introduced native plants that really, once the patient come and have a setting in the garden, they can enjoy something that, that link them to the nature. They have the feeling in this place with the nature. They feel that they are in the nature. So I really hope that architects now, when they design, they put the nature as a part of their landscape.
That's very interesting. Thank you very much. Let's stay on the subject of planting at the minute, because water and ecology has been a major consideration, a major driver of how this region has successfully grown throughout the centuries. So historically, because water has generally defined settlement, and settlement becomes community, how do we then work with water and planting to make a sense of community in our new developments? I'll start with David this time.
It's a very tricky question.
That's why I started with you.
I know, and it's fundamentally again something that is always in the back of our minds. As an element that we live in a place that has water is scarce. I think also, from some research, it's known that we are also among the highest water consumptions per capita in the world. So it's an element that again that requires immediate attention in terms of how we begin to change the discourse, change the approach into water as not simply being an element that is conceived on pipes, but it's an element that brings it goes back to again the heritage element of when it was originally was used in terms of centering and creating the frameworks and the armatures and where community and cultures were originally conceived. So it's an element that requires, it's a moral necessity to really, bring a better approach to how we handle it and integrate it into our projects.
Thanks for that. Sam, do you think water is really given the prominence in design that it duly deserves, or do you think it's just an assumption that we can have this beautiful, lush landscape if we want it, and not really give it the credit that it deserves about how precious it is to this region?
Yeah, that's the key word. It's very, very precious, and we need to be aware of the amount of water that we use. And if we just relate that to planting, Tephrosia apellina, a lovely small plant that grows up in the wadis of the UAE, has a beautiful little purple flower, and it ekes out a living when it rains. So it's small and it's dense and it's lovely. When we use it and we plant it, and all of a sudden it gets sweet soiled, all of a sudden it gets all the irrigation it needs, it becomes quite big. It can get 600 or 700 millimeters. So the point there is, do we look at nature? Do we look at the amount of water that the plants are getting, maybe start to reduce it in certain areas, and manage the application of that water? So for me, that's one of the big things. And then obviously there's the discussion on the movement of water and the filage and the importance that's had throughout the region.
Thank you, that's very interesting. Michael, your thoughts, please.
Of course, it's a key topic. You know, this year we just lost Dr. Kong Jinghu, who have been founding the concept of Sponge City in China and all over the world. And of course, Sponge City here can be something very, at the first sight, a bit strange, because yeah, it's not that much of water that we can sponge. But in fact, I believe, and we are working on such topic where how, you know, again, traditional know-how, and we use, again, very deep and close study. For example, in KSA with at Tuwaim Oasis, where we have been studying how the community have been collecting, using, and sharing the water through a wadi, and how they have been able to develop, you know, an oasis that can become culturally a very important step into a Pelgrim road, etc. So it has so much and deep meaning and really the foundation of a society, of a culture, of a community. And again, with a humble approach to understand all this way that people have been doing, we are trying today to reuse on what I call a dry sponge city approach, but using this kind of approach and understanding of how we can deal with water and how we can share and how we can use it on the best and more meaningful way to create something that is very innovative and very sustainable and very embed into the local culture, yeah.
From my perspective, I know that when we're responding to clients' wishes, and I'm specifically thinking more about residential developments, there is obviously a very commercial attitude that we need to address, which is to sell the product, which is to sell a community, their lifestyle that goes around it. I think there is also a general aesthetic now that fits most models that seems to be the model that sells the houses and the communities. But that doesn't necessarily fulfill what we're trying to do, to be more sustainable, to be more cultural by using these beautiful native plants. It's very, very difficult actually to introduce those plants that most people are used to seeing out in the desert and in the wadis. They don't look particularly neat and tidy in a lovely residential community. So how do we create that sense of community whilst trying to be responsive to the local culture or the local heritage of this region? Dr. Ali, let's start with you, please.
Actually, we should inspire with nature again. Can you imagine we can green our wall in all cities with plants that can not use a single conventional water from irrigation? Actually, if you go for sandy dunes, you will find them even during the summer green with succulent plants. The root system is just only a few centimeters. So they are securing their water 100% from humidity, from atmospheric moisture.
So do you think this is a lack of understanding of what we're using then? Is it a lack of understanding from our side as designers on what we can utilize within the cultural plant palette, do you think? We need better education on that.
Yeah, exactly. So actually we need to not educate the community, but we need to educate the landscape people working in landscaping. So using those plants in greening walls, we just need very simple technology, simple media that enable plants to harvest the atmospheric moisture, and they can grow green all over the year without irrigation. So you can imagine if you have our wall in all streets, our cities green without water. So I believe this is just part of the culture. We brought it to the city. So in addition to this, we need to connect the community with the landscaping. And again, here we are working in University of Sharjah in a project, we call it Green Roof with Agri-Voltaic. So panels now, solar panels now are very cheap. And the advancement is growing so fast. So we try to use the relationship, which is mutualistic relationship between the panel and the crops. So panels are benefits from the crops, we are cooling them. Crops are getting benefit from the shading of the ground, of the panel, and such mutual or symbiotic relationship between both of them, both are benefits from the relation. And at the same time, you can imagine if we have such a green roof growing with crops, so in every building, people's living residents will go up to grow plants, to harvest, so we connect them together. If, in addition, we try to install small units for what we call it treating wastewater of the building. So we recycle the sewage water and use it in irrigation. We have like a small unit of compost that all food collected from the building could be composted and converted. So by this way, the building will be self-sustainable, produce their food, produce their electricity, we connect people together, and at the same time, we make it like a circular approach for everything will be recycled and reused. So this is the way I really hope to see our buildings, our design in the future, relying on such connecting peoples, working with nature to solve our, sorry for long time.
No, I think this is actually, it's taking quite an interesting direction. So I'd like to introduce Sam into this discussion then. So on a design process level, from what Dr. Ali's just been telling us, how do you see that, or have you implemented something very similar to that in any of your projects?
Well, I think we're one piece of the puzzle as designers. We've got clients who are often paying the bills. We are designing, we have the municipalities that are approving, and then we have the contractor, which is creating and then maintaining. So if we just talk about plants just quickly, and we see a lot of our friends in the construction industry here, there's also a shift in the way that we are maintaining the plants. So moving away from a very tapered, controlled maintenance regime and starting to let the plants grow. You know, if we look at a leptadenia that will get large and wild, I think we celebrate that and get the systems in place so that they are maintained to create that form. But I think for us as designers, we need to have it in the right location. So it's, it's a cyclical team.
It's part of the process. David, your thoughts on this, please.
Yeah, I mean, you're dead on right on, you know, it's interesting to see how, especially from the real estate perspective, you know, like how many of these communities are being coined as, you know, as very lush, you know, a way of living. They're also very attractive, you know, in a place like, you know, where desert is the majority of the landscape that surrounds us. But I think, again, you know, it brings interesting questions about us as designers. How can we shift again or tilt the balance to, you know, I don't know, through design, through curating stories and narratives and poetries that are grounded again into what this context means. How do we understand this context? How do we own this context? How do we embrace it in a way that becomes a little bit more nutritious to the project? I think maybe again there might be opportunities to shift that balance and rebalance it in ways where aesthetic values, the aspects of beauties of the landscape doesn't necessarily translate into lush landscapes or lush vegetated, areas, but equally the opposite, right? So I think this is the tricky part, but also the interesting moment, I think, tipping point, where maybe there is an appreciation on honing those values and reappropriating them, and then bringing again the thread of history and character and conduits that are appropriate from this region,
Yeah, I think I touched on it earlier. The rate at which we live now, the speed at which we do everything, from the moment we wake up in the morning to the point at when we go to bed at night, everything seems to be by the minute. So I believe that there is definitely a need to draw people outside and slow people down a little bit, or give people the choice to slow down and utilize the outside of in their communities, well, in their gardens even, but more so where we're responsible for designing public realm in the communities, to actually give them the means to make the choice to go outside and slow down a bit. So in many respects, it might be seen that we're not providing the value, but value of private time, of just a slower pace, and being able to really benefit from that and let your brain rest a little bit. It can be a little bit undermined in value. So Michael, how do you bring the value of that into your designs and to your clients' attention?
Thank you. Also, to answer to the former question, I think we should never forget that landscape, the notion of landscape, starts from art, from the perception we have of the space and the painting, and it's really a cultural approach and cultural vision, regard on outdoor, and it's really starting with painting, etc. I think it's really important when we talk about landscape and using water, etc., planting, to understand that it's about the eyes of the society to the space. And here it's a cultural aspect that need to be done, and our role is not only a greener, not only about planting, but it's really about sharing a vision and understanding of the place where we are, of the meaning of the place, and to maybe humbly educate or advise or attract attention to the value of the place we are designing and the sense. Of course, probably in early time, we love lush stuff and we love, flower. My mom, like flowers and all this stuff, and having something very lush. But today, I think our role is not only as a doer, but really to explain and to have this relationship with our client, but also maybe with the final user of the space, to educate their eyes to appreciate different kind of landscape and understand and explain them the value of it and the meaning of it, because again, it's a meaning with a society with 1,000 of history, etc. So I think that's also our role, where sometimes as a landscape architect, we are always at the back of the chain, the last guy, when everybody have been passing through, the urbanist, the architect, etc. And we came, to green, but actually our role, it's so deep here. It's to understand the overall structure of a territory, the relation of a society and this territory, and somehow to reflect it. And maybe also in residential project, where it's, of course, the most challenging. I hope I answer your question, but I think it,
yeah, that's very good, thank you. All right, let's be a little more project specific. Sam, can you give us an indication, in your opinion, of some particularly successful cultural projects? It doesn't necessarily have to be heritage directed, but something that really resonates on a cultural level in Saudi Arabia and or the UAE.
For us, a project that springs to mind is Qasr Al Hosn, down here in Abu Dhabi. One of the lovely things about that project is it spans a really long time. The fort was built in the 1790s. The outer palace was built in the 1930s, and then the National Council Chambers was built in the 1960s. So for us as landscape architects on that project, we had to research and understand all those different layers and then come up with an appropriate response and an appropriate landscape. And in that particular case, it's about the landscape not being the hero. The landscape was the canvas or the fabric for the buildings to then be the moment. So I think subtlety is really important. And then when you do a fairly simple landscape, it's the detailing becomes critical. The steps and the shadow gaps and the way that the walls link with the ground plane, and then also dealing with or working with all your subconsultants. How does the landscape feel at night? What is the ambience of all the lighting? And a commonality of materiality between the inside and out.
That's a good point, because I think sometimes we look at landscape from an outside perspective, only looking at it from the outside. But in actual fact, many of us view the landscape from the inside looking out. It's, you know, it's what is outside of our window, or it's what is outside of our conference area. So having that inside-outside perspective is quite important. And sometimes you're right, the simplicity in the detail is enough, but then there's sometimes when you're not able to get outside and you need something to resonate back to you from outside. So, David, can you give us a suggestion of where you think that might have happened in some of your projects?
Sure. Two projects that have been, you know, transformational in my career. One is having worked in Al-Balad. Siting in Jeddah, you know, understanding the Hijazi style, distilling that both from the urban morphology of landscape and public realm, but equally from the architectural perspective, you know, because the two elements are obviously very intrinsically connected. We had been responsible to oversee the upgrading of the whole public realm. So, you know, that has just simply, again, entailed, you know, really going almost to an archaeological kind of like a surveying of the site and understanding the site and the culture of this place. Another one that is also being transformational and to a completely different scale is the work that we've been doing in Diriyah, which again, you know, it all revolved around the Aturaif, you know, ancient, you know, ruins of the old Saud, you know, town. But then the translation of all of that into the, you know, like the developing of the Nashti code and really, again, you know, evolving this into a scale of a project that I don't think anywhere in the planet has seen something of this magnitude. You know.
So one thing that I was working on the same project, but from a master planning perspective, and some of that, one of the questions was, how does the Najd style, how is it portrayed in the landscape? Because it's typically architectural. It's Arabic planning. It's in the detailing of the textures and the materials and the colors and maybe some patterning. But how do you translate that into landscape?
It all had translated into the, again, the urban morphology of the blocks, how the spaces, how you move people around, how obviously you bring contemporary means of servicing, obviously, and you know, anything from fire, life safety, and accessibility, and making all of that, you know, workable. But it all comes again to the all basic compositional and analytical rules of the Nashti style, right? From the Sikas to the Barajas to the, you know, the scalability of all these elements.
I was going to say, is it about scale?
And that becomes extremely fascinating, you know, like the translation of all these ancient sort of like systems. But again, it just all entails into going through this very forensic, tedious, exhaustive analysis and translation of the old style or the old compositional rules of view-shed corridors, spacing between buildings, you know, that how all that gets translated and say control from a mathematical point of view, because many of the architectural, you know, remnants that we have in the Middle East, you know, are things that once you bring the science to it, there's very fantastic, you know, accuracy in how things were sized, placed, you know, oriented. So there's all these underlayers in that analysis that comes and brings fruition to what we're doing, you know.
That's really interesting. Thank you for that. Michael, your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. I really agree. I think we are always focusing on the form, and sometimes we forget the meaning of the space. Effectively, all our code and, you know, are about color, shape, etc., and it's very beautiful, can be. But actually, again, if we want to pay a real tribute, it's really about understanding the deep composition of the space, the deep meaning, the relationship of a society and its environment. And maybe a project that is not reusing all this formal code, but deeply understand the structure and the composition and all this background, pay more tribute and more respect to the site, the society and the community than just a mimicking of traditional architecture. I think that's something very pointy, very hard maybe to hear, because we love and it's easy to talk about color and shape and triangles and stuff. But what is the real meaning of all of that? What is behind? Just one project. I will just finish on that, maybe two, but I will be short.
Go ahead.
Here in Abu Dhabi, we are working, again, I told you that we have been really studying how, you know, the society have been working on oasis, etc. And we are really working on a project here in Abu Dhabi of rehabilitation of a park, where we try really to, based on water, reuse very traditional system with something that is really, it doesn't look like traditional park, okay? But actually the approach and the meaning, it's same. It's really a copy-paste, but you will not recognize it, you know? And the next one, and I will be short, it's also a project that we got shortlisted for the award tonight, finger crossed, but it's actually about planting, and we have been working with Aldar to, so it's a beautiful building designed by BIG, and we have a rooftop, and there we bring a very different approach where we let the plant grow by themselves, and the new seed to come by on the site, and we would like to propose really a different approach of what is nature, what is planting, and what kind of plant can actually grow. So it's kind of natural reserve within a very urban and very you know, active district.
So maybe we hope to see that on the screen later then, Lucy. Good luck with that project. Dr. Ali, what project sits close to your heart? What do you think is a truly successful cultural project?
Actually, we would like to challenge public to be involved interactively with landscaping.
Interesting.
And this is the most important. Public gardens, few people visit, and they are passively visiting public gardens. We would like to make the public garden more interactive and to link this with the culture. One way, and we are working in 2 projects actually in this part, we would like to grow public garden with thematic gardens, which means every place will specific types of plants, like maybe medicinal plants, another section with edible plants. We know people go for the desert to collect specific plants, intentionally go spend the time. So if we grow such plants in the public gardens, and we invite people to collect and to make, and actually we make, like, you know, every weekend celebration. We all know shua or moringa, which is very famous here in Abu Dhabi in making tannour. It is a very delicious dish here. So what about if we make this in public garden and invited people to participate and to eat dishes with very little prices? Medicinal plants, it is rooted. Most of the people, current generation, unfortunately, they do little about our culture in relation to this. If we grow medicinal plants and we brought some people from the local, I mean from the rural area, who can use and who can distribute those native plants, medicinal native plants with prescriptions from their sites. So they will encourage them. So it is educational, more interactive. So this is a project that really we would like to see most of our public guard making it more interactive with the community to link them with the culture. The other one is community garden. And we are working now in a community garden in Sharjah in which we ask people, everybody to have like a small piece of land, grow some certain kinds of crop during the weekend. So all the maintenance will be from the municipality. So because people has very little background about agriculture, but we just encourage them to grow, to harvest, just only to grow and to harvest. But all kinds of irrigation and maintenance will be by the municipality laborers. So by this way, people will be encouraged to go to the public gardens, actively participate, learn more, link them to the heritage, and at the same time make it more sustainable.
I think the public integration is the thing that is the continuity of our culture. It's pulling people together, giving them a space in which to interact, to learn from each other, to experience the same thing in a very simplistic environment. No gimmicks, no fading fashions, very, very basic. Just good, honest landscaping that can take people, transport them away from their busy lives just for a moment, and they can enjoy that space. And as I say, learn from people like ourselves, maybe experts in the field who might want to engage in that, or maybe it's simply they're just learning from people within their own community, from grandparents and aunts and uncles and so on. But anyway, thank you very, very much. Before we finish, I would just like to ask the question. So looking ahead, obviously in this rapidly growing environment that we live in the Middle East, what kind of guidelines, what recommendations as dare I say, senior designers in this field, what kind of guidelines or inspiration can we give to the next generation of landscape architects? Let's start with Michael. Michael.
Oh, okay. I think, again, it's about knowing better the past to design better the future, you know. That's simple, yeah.
Thank you. David.
I think it's appropriateness, you know. I think it's, again, it's very relevant and almost mandatory that we bring, you know, any project through the right set of questions. You know, that's, I think, it's again, it's our duty as citizens of this planet to be able to take accountability and be responsible of what we're saying or what we're doing is appropriate.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Sam?
To landscape architects coming up, I'd say take your time.
Yes.
I think we get so much information, and let the design reveal itself. As landscape architects, we get information on the historical context, trees, surveys. Absorb all that information, and that'll create an appropriate response.
And I think if I can take one thing away, understand what you're working with. Like, learn about plants, learn about materials, learn how to respect it, learn what it likes, what it doesn't like. Think about the historic technologies, actually, that have allowed these cultures to evolve over time, because it is very simple. We're adding layers of digital technology, but actually the fundamentals are very, very straightforward. And I don't think we should discard those. I think we should celebrate them as best we can. So, Dr. Ali, finally, just from your side, what do you think, what would you recommend?
Actually, I am happy here because here, this platform connecting people, bringing multidisciplinary approaches. So I really hope, despite I'm looking for the back, for the heritage part and the past, I also looking for the future. AI, digital twins, all of these should be applied for monitoring our landscape, detecting any kind of pathogens, give exact message in a proper time for people working in the area. So we really need agricultural people to be involved more in such a platform. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that we're drawing to a conclusion then. I'd like to thank all the panelists. Thank you so much for joining today. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. World-class discussion, by the way. Annie, you did really well. And for that, I have a gift for you all. This is a stress ball for the next time you have to deal with your boss from Unique Urban Solutions, one of our sponsors.
Thank you.
And Michael, I love your hat. Next year, Michael, I'm going to give you a speech just on water, so you can say water, like this. I love the way you say water. Thank you so much, guys. And also, Cape Reed, another sponsor. There's a nice... ladies and gentlemen, please thank our panel today. And you did great. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.